Shukor nakaslem jong unongsan Hima.
Ka kinhon menteri mentakasngi ha kajing kenduk lang kelihat hari ta ha ki babun ki Bynta ki bedai mat ka Jylla kawai ni kimat ki bak kinhon menteri kala ya keren kadai Halor ki nongsong Madan ki bedan ha keleng jong kanong ba Shillong ha keren baki dong Thaw khubor hadin kajing kenduk jong ki menteri Sorkar u menteri ke Sorkar Jylla wa polling do ulia thu bakadon ka an jong ke Sorkar Pdeng kamala benjur haus nam arajar khatsau ya kabala tip kum ka the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act arajar khatsau but day Halor kani baka Sorkar Jylla kala Thaw ye kikindon haus nam arajar arpuar nakaliang ka kinhon menteri mentakasngi kala menjur ka draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Scheme arajar arpulai but ka thong jong ka Sorkar kalong bandon ka jingya biang lang Pdeng gajing don kam ban im jong ki ba song road surong bat ru ban pej bakan don gajing shngan bat ban pej baki wei ki mat kum gajing bot yaki an ki kanun gajing khap nya bat gajing shngan jong ki balai bawan nakaliang ka Sorkar kala shimmi ka senjam ban le daga survey ban tip bha hakino ki jaka bakin sha ban shong Madan baragino ki jaka bakinam sha shu ban shong uba pol ula benrap ru ka baong baka Sorkar kala patha ya baro baki de ban penrung kerteng yala de lingba gani ka scheme bat ki de ru ban penshisha da ka baki de ban don ya ka epic ka sernot ka baki de ki bala shong la sa ha ka Jylla kum balaisnam ki de ru ban pentim bahagi ni ki jaka ki shong dukan bat ha ka to ka jaka ki de ban shong la kumno kum ban reu banai but habe day but kito ki basong dukan sabar jong pu sam jong municipal ru ki day bandon ye trading license shishulu ya thoru ba ya ni scheme la munjur hadin ba ki yo e jing ajing mut na ki kin hon ba pher kum ki EDC ki KSU ki rang ba snong ka kin hon ki basong Madan but ki wei de
today the cabinet took up a few items. Some of these are routine matters, so but others which are more important. One relates to a matter which is of concern to all of us, that is street vending and vendors, and the other matter relates to the power department, for which our minister in charge is here to brief you. On the first matter, which is the street vendors, as you are aware that there is a central act adopted, passed in 2014, called the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act of 2014, under which rules were framed by the state government in 2022. Now, as a part of the process of the framing of these rules, a scheme was conceived known as the draft Meghalaya Street Vendors Scheme 2023, and today this draft was approved by the cabinet with a few observations and amendments. Basically, the intention of the government is that we strike a balance between the need of providing livelihood to street vendors and the need to also ensure that other equally important issues like law and order, decongestion, and safety to pedestrians, and the fact that, as we observed in the recent fire incident, how street hawkers were a major cause of the delay in the intervention by the fire services in containing the inferno at Kandailat. So today, the scheme was approved, and the salient features of this scheme I can share with you. But broadly, it speaks of town vending committees who will be eligible to be identified as legal hawkers. There are a set of criteria clearly laid down. For instance, the person has to be has to possess an epic issued by the Election Commission of India, plus a certificate of at least 6 years, 3 years residence in Meghalaya. The vendor should have been vending in a particular spot for a minimum of 6 months, and 3, he possesses a valid trade license in areas that are outside of the 3 normal areas under the control of the Shillong Municipal Board. We have also received a number of suggestions from various stakeholders, including the KHADC, KSU, Sanjog Kirangba Shnong, Hawkers Associations, and today, after very detailed discussions, we have been able to finalize this scheme, and what we will now do next is to immediately take up an inventarization. We will start with the survey of the street vendors and process the applications of these vendors based on the broad framework which I have spelled out. Then we will also be taking up this special planning in order to decide which are vending and which are no vending zones. And the government would also strive to provide dedicated vending zones and market spaces to the street vendors. So broadly, this is what the scheme is as conceived earlier and as approved by the cabinet today. This will be based on the cabinet decision today. We will notify the scheme and also notify the areas which we will be covering immediately. So it should take about a couple of months. Trading or vending in a particular place for a minimum of 6 months, and also that they possess a trade license based wherever the Trading by Non-Tribals Act is applicable. Okay. Based on their having met these conditions, we will then separate, the legal from the illegal, and only legal, authorized, registered vendors will be given spaces in the vending zones.
Bapa, what about these vendors who are occupying the footpaths and whereas pedestrians are
That is the task before us is to decide on which are the vending and which are the no vending zones. And obviously, footpaths will not be allowed to be declared as vending zones.
Which are the areas which are most likely to be vending zones?
Which are?
The areas in town which are more likely to be.
No, based on the based on this master plan and the identification of zones will be based on certain criteria. For instance, we will make sure that these zones will not impede the movement of traffic, the movement of pedestrians, will not cause law and other issues. Those are factors that will be taken into account.
Bapur, will these vending zones be an open area or a building?
We are at the moment talking about open spaces. But when you talk about the matter that you brought up, this relates to markets. We have a plan in mind to also construct hawkers markets as an.
So as per your data, what is the report of how many legal and illegal hawkers in the state?
There's no legal, there's no illegal as of now because the scheme has not been in place.
No, but the figure, the total
Roughly
figure about
number.
legal
How
and
many
illegal. Yeah.
Yeah, roughly maybe in not only in municipal area but outside municipal area maybe. Is it also outside municipal area you're talking about?
All of
You don't have that, but more or less
Shalom.
3,000 will be there.
But there are hawkers who have already registered themselves with the office of SM.
This is a specific scheme that only today received the approval of the cabinet. So this scheme will ensure that
They are registered.
the registration process is
Legally,
legal now, because this scheme is part of a central act, and we are framing the rules and the scheme in accordance with that central act.
We do have two types of hawkers, we may say. One is who sit in the same place and the other one is mobile hawking. And is there any
yes.
plan that we'll do something for this mobile hawking also?
Once an area is declared as a vending zone, it will apply to everybody, and likewise a no vending zone. Okay.
Cause a lot of problem to pedestrians as well. In the name of livelihood and then also affect others.
You see, as I mentioned earlier, under this central act, okay, the state had only adopted the act in 2022, right? So that was just last year, and today the government, if you talk of government, this government is barely 7 months old. So now that we are seized of the enormity of the problem, we are determined to, as I said, have a fine balancing between somebody's need for livelihood and others' need for safety and free movement and not causing inconvenience to pedestrians or motorists, which is why this scheme has been envisaged and approved by the cabinet today.
Will this particular act be applicable to 6 scheduled areas also where the falls under the jurisdiction of the KJDC?
Yes. As I mentioned, the requirement for a trade license would mean that it is applicable in areas outside the control of the municipal boards.
Bapu, you mentioned about new identity.
See, as of today, this is an unregulated trade, right? Where you don't even know the exact number of persons involved in that trade. Whether we would know whether that person who avails a license would today sit in Lankra and tomorrow shift to Polo. So how do you regulate unless you have this scheme in place? So, which is why today we have approved this scheme in order to be able to regulate vending, and it is only when we do that that any authority can, issue licenses. And for instance, there is a role for the Dorbar Snongs, okay, that they shall also have to furnish a certificate from respective Dorbar Snongs. Now, unless you have a scheme in place, how does the Darbar issue a certificate for somebody who keeps moving from one locality to the other?
So are we to understand that this survey also will, facilitate the process of registration of all hawkers and vendors in Shillong?
Yes, the whole purpose of the scheme is to facilitate registration of these hawkers based on certain parameters, and once they fulfill the criteria as defined by those parameters, we will then have a list, and this list will be put up before the vending committees, the town vending committees, which will then approve the list accordingly.
Okay.